Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, it's Eastern Conference Wednesday, a day late. But what hasn't happened through the first 3 days of games? We've had suspensions, upsets, and everything in between. Let's get into it and more. It's all brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. We'll get you $20 off your first ticket purchase. It's Game Time, the official ticketing sponsor of the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen on this Thursday, April 20th. I'm Ross Levitan. It's the Battle of Ontario edition, as always, on Wednesdays on Locked On NHL. I got Mike DiStefano with me from Locked On Leafs. And Mikey, happy 19th anniversary, buddy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I know exactly what you're referring to. And it is something that us in Leafs Nation have not really been able to see again in, what's it been, 19 years? Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
The last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a playoff series, Joe Nieuwendyk put two stinkers past Patty Lalime. You had Brian McCabe put the icing on the cake. Vaclav Varada. Assists go to Zdeno Chara and Marian Hossa for the Ottawa Senators. That's how long it's been. But does this year feel different? Game one certainly didn't.
Yeah, no, game one was not a fun one to watch. I was there in the building and, after the, puck drop, everything felt good, right? The building was buzzing, which, for a fact, you've been down there for games before. That building doesn't really get going. But they do in the playoffs, and the rally towels were going until they were not. Really early on, Tampa Bay scores, kind of took the wind out of the sails in the building. They scored another goal. Sorelli did a few minutes later, and then before you know it, it's the end of the first period. It's 3-0 Tampa, and the Leafs are being booed off the ice in the first period. It was almost over, through the first 20, and they clawed themselves back into the game. And then, some shenanigans kind of took place, and Tampa grabbed a hold of that game again, and it was history once they kind of got that lead back. Tampa doesn't surrender leads. So, yeah, game one did not go Toronto's way. They looked brutal in game one. It was probably their worst performance of the season, unfortunately. But game two tonight, buddy. Game two tonight, it's basically game 7 for them, though. It's must win. They go down 0-2. Pack it in, series over.
In Toronto too, right? As you mentioned, the building was rocked. Yeah. 7-3 was the final score. And Mikey, like I always talk on Locked On Sens about momentum goals, and that's goals in the first 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes, and 2 minutes after a goal is scored either way. And the Lightning had 3 of them in the first 2 periods. So it was that kind of, you thought you could maybe even take it into the first intermission, down 2, regroup, get after it. But was that third goal really kind of a backbreaker to you? And then, they scored 2 seconds left in the second period as well.
Yeah, the third goal was a big-time backbreaker because, to your point, 2-0 is a lot more, easier to come back from than 3-0, obviously. But for me, the real backbreaker was, to your point, the one that you allow shortly after scoring. They made it 3-2, and then they got a stupid penalty, which we can get into the officiating. But they got a stupid soft penalty on David Kampf after they made it 3-2. All the momentum was going their way, and they end up scoring on that power play, the Tampa Bay Lightning, to make it 4-2. And then that was pretty much the backbreaker. And then Michael Bunting gets his 5-minute major. They score on that power play, and they score twice, actually. One in the literally 0.01 seconds left on the clock. They scored a weak one to make it 5-2. And yes, then that was that was a 6-2 goal. Now I remember that was very much curtains from there, and got to see Joseph Wall for the final 20 minutes of the game. How fun.
Yeah, no Matt Murray. Still recovering from injury. No point in a comeback. I had that easy slam dunk on Twitter. But all jokes aside, it was a fast-paced, entertaining game, and that this series is only getting started. Who was it on 1050 that had the spin zone that usually they blow it up in game 7? So we're just getting out of the way early this time. That's an all-time take.
I honestly can't remember who said that. I probably should if it's one of my coworkers, but Carlo Hayes,
Probably
probably
Carlo, right?
one of those two. Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, he had the alumni jacket on and everything for that one. But all jokes aside, the serious note of this one is Michael Bunting suspended 3 games. First, your thoughts on the length of the suspension?
Look, I believed it was a suspendable play. I totally do. I thought that it was, it was a bad play, very unintelligent move on Bunting's part. I thought 3 games was a little excessive, though. I thought for sure 1, maybe he gets a second. But 3, I thought was just a little bit aggressive and overboard. And uh, Jeff O'Neill from Overdrive, he kind of called it the Michael Bunting tax, which I don't know, it fits for me just because we know his reputation with the officials, or we in Toronto, I suppose. I don't know what the league-wide knowledge of that is, but he does not have a good reputation with the officials. And for him to get pretty much as harsh as a suspension I think he could have gotten on that play, there's no leeway whatsoever. And 3 playoff games equates to basically 6 regular season games. And to me, that just wasn't a 6-game / 3-game suspension. I thought that it was, a tad overboard, but, here we are. I'll be curious to see if it gets appealed at all to try and reduce it to 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, well, he won't be in the lineup tonight. So who replaces him?
Matthew Nyes is probably going to end up replacing him. The kid from who went all the way to the Final Four with Minnesota. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He played the final 3 games for Toronto, and there was thoughts that he might be able to actually crack this opening night lineup in game 1, but ultimately did not. And weren't sure when we were going to see Matthew Nyes. Figured at some point he would get a look at, into the lineup. And it's unfortunate that it's coming at the expense of a Michael Bunting suspension, but he is going to come in. He's going to play on the 3rd line next to Ryan O'Reilly. So, pretty good line mate to start your NHL career off with, your playoff career at the very least. So I think that he'll be fine. But Michael Bunting is a loss. Like, I see people on Twitter saying, "Oh, the team's better off without Michael Bunting. The guy stinks." Blah blah blah. I'm like, the guy's a top line player on this team. Like, is he a top line player overall? I'd probably not. No, but he's worked so well with those two. Like, over 50 points last year, over 50 points this year, playing on that top line. He does, some little things that that not a lot of people do on this team. But ultimately, the Leafs still, this year means so much. So they got to figure out a way to move on without him for the next 3 games. And I mean, the talk that this is his last game as a Maple Leaf is silly to me, unless they get swept, I suppose, which is possible. But I think he still draws back into the lineup once he's ready to return in game 5.
If necessary.
Yeah, if necessary. And if not...
Oh, well, I can now.
If not, I quit the show. I'm going to quit the show. If they get swept, I don't know anything about hockey, because I thought that the Leafs were going to take this thing in 5 games. If they get swept in 4, I don't know anything about hockey, and I don't deserve to be on this show.
That's awesome. All right. Hey, timestamp. But Calle Yarncroke is going to go up to the top line, it seems. And, man, there were 2 games in April against Ottawa where he was playing with Matthews and Marner, and I thought he was unreal. He scored a couple of goals in that as well. So I didn't really get what the whole move was, putting O'Reilly with Tavares. I thought the whole point of bringing him in was to create depth. So it seems like they are doing Matthews, Tavares, O'Reilly down the middle as God intended.
Yes, and I very much am in favor of that move, because I'm with you. I thought by loading up the top 6 and then having a traditional bottom 6, to me in game 1 was pretty much just like feeding into the hands of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are built the same way. But if you had 3 lines of depth, I mean, now you've all of a sudden have at least one line that should be freed up to do some sort of damage. Because they shut down those other 2 lines with, Point, Kucherov, Stamkos. Of course, Killorn and Sorelli shut down the Matthews line. But now you've got them locked and loaded in 3 different slots. You've got a true top 9. So one of those 3 lines have an advantage over the opposition and should be able to cook tonight. We'll see what happens. Interior Cal Yarncroc point, he has played really well alongside Austin Matthews. He's put up there around the trade deadline-ish, and, he stuck there the whole season. And then, for whatever reason, the playoffs, they're like, okay, we're going to go back to Bunting. And Yarncroc go down to the 3rd line. It was like, okay, that's an interesting move. So I actually will be curious to see what happens. They did score a goal in the 3rd period after Bunting was kicked out of the game, and it was a really nice tic-tac-toe play. So hopefully they can carry that into the next game, but do it in the 1st period, not wait until it's all over in the 3rd.
Final question on this series, and we'll move on because there's been great hockey all across the board. But back-to-back Stanley Cup finalist Corey Perry, the age 37. How do you stop this guy? Goal and 2 assists, only played 13 minutes. Like,
I know.
That's the type of thing you want out of O'Reilly at this stage of the game. No, you need some guys in the bottom 6, to your point, moving them down there that can pop off offensively at a time.
Yeah, I honestly, like, you can't. You just got to tip your cap to the guy. Like, Corey Perry's just a gamer. He's been doing this for years. It's the 3rd straight.
I saw Tampa play in Ottawa 2 weeks ago. He won a cup in Ottawa 15 years ago.
No, I know. I know. He's crazy. Like, he's so efficient too. Like, he played 13 minutes, but he was like probably one of the best players on the ice. He was just getting into it on every single shift. He was making a play or mucking it up or doing something. That's what Corey Perry does, man. Like, he's a little rat type of player, sneaky little devil type of guy. But at the end of the day, he is a good hockey player. I mean, he's a former Hart Trophy winner, playing on the 4th line now, and he's kind of morphed into a villain-esque role on the 4th line in Tampa. But he's still a good player. Toronto's got to make sure that they figure out a way to stop that guy. Make sure he can't bombard the goaltender in the crease all night long like he has been. They got to protect the front of the net, basically, is what the Maple Leafs did not do in Game 1, that they certainly are going to have to do in Game 2, and against that guy in particular, in Corey Perry.
Tonight, Toronto Maple Leafs host the Tampa Bay Lightning, 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll have power rankings later today, and then our friends Gil Martin and Rachel Donner will take care of all your hockey needs here on Locked On NHL. For more coverage, you can follow Mike's show at Locked On Leafs on Twitter, at YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. You can do the same for Locked On Senators. We are firmly in off-season mode. Just verbal meme, SpongeBob meme, the guy's standing up in his house. Everyone else is playing outside, just blind shut, just looking around. That's me here. Just hate watching these Stanley Cup playoffs, except my future on the Winnipeg Jets might look real good after tonight. We'll save that for the Western Conference counterparts. More Locked On NHL coming up next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is fast and easy way to buy tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you've had. I'm on Game Time right now, and to get in tonight to Game 2 of the Leafs Lightning series, you either have to know a guy like Al's brother, or you have to go on the Game Time app where you can get in for $238 per ticket each for the balcony level, and that is all in at Game Time. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. We'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Get images of your seats on the website as well, so you're not surprised when you get there, and snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, all guaranteed at Game Time. All right, Mikey, here we go. Stanley Cup playoff hockey. We got each series to get to. Already covered the Maple Leafs Lightning game 2 tonight. Why don't we hit on the other series that is going in to game 2? The others are already through a pair and traveling to a new location. But the Battle of the Hudson River, the New York Rangers laid an absolute beatdown on the New Jersey Devils in game 1. It wasn't even close. From the drop of the puck, the Rangers just dominated. They got better goaltending. They had better special teams. They were better 5-on-5. What do the Devils need to do to get the split on home ice tonight?
Well, I mean, the goaltending is definitely a big discrepancy. I mean, there's a big drop off between Igor Shesterkin and Vitek Vanacek, and he hasn't been there before. None of those guys have really been there before, So I think they'll come out stronger in game 2. You did see them kind of claw back. They played better, after the first 10 minutes. It was kind of similar to the Leafs, except they somewhat stayed in it a lot longer. But the Rangers got up to the early 2-0 lead, and then just kind of ended up coasting into that game to a 5-1 win. I think the Devils, to be honest, just get a couple more saves, and they just got to keep pressing. They got to utilize that speed. They got to break down the Rangers, get some speed going through the neutral zone, and find ways to get Shesterkin moving laterally and beat that guy. I know it's really, really tough, and it's not going to happen too often. But they can't get into a track meet with this New York team either. They got to find a way to slow down that offense. They got to find a way to, protect their front of the net and, keep it a pretty low scoring game. I think that's got to be the recipe for success for the Devils tonight.
And they need more from more forwards, right? Like Jack Hughes gets the only goal unassisted. He's been leading the offense all year, but they've been getting contributions from everyone. Like I'm sure the captain doesn't like being a -3 and his playoff debut, right? And Nico Hischier is a very honest defensive player that I thought would match up well against the Mika Zibanejad type on the Rangers side. But really, I mean, I said off the top, they dominated 5-on-5. I think special teams was really where this game was won. The Rangers go 2 for 3 on the power play. Devils go 0 for 4 on theirs. And giveaway city, too. Devils were charged with 13 giveaways in that game. The Rangers only 3. And this, to me, could signal you got experience on one side and you have youthful exuberance on the other. They'll get their games here, and credit to the Devils. Their window is like just a smidge open on the way up. But right now, if you're the Rangers, like it's win now mode. You went out, you got Patty Kane, you got Vladimir Tarasenko. Both of them get on the score sheet in this game. Like I know they're technically the underdogs. They started on the road, 20 minutes from MSG. Like this is an all-time inner city game, really, in Newark and Manhattan.
Yeah.
My God, that to me, this might be a little quicker than I thought in Rangers in 6. But you know what? This is just to me. If I'm the Devils, I'm gonna obviously be upset if it goes that way. But dude, this is you got to look long term with this Devils team. They're just starting.
Oh, absolutely. They've got so many good young pieces. I mean, I'm sure Hischier will come out and have a much better game. You've got Jack Hughes, who's an up-and-coming superstar in this league. Dawson Mercer, I thought, had a fantastic year. Sharon Govich, someone who does need to also provide a little bit more, who I've been, I wouldn't say, a little disappointed in since arriving there is Timo Meyer, who was, the big cat, the big fish in at the trade deadline. He hasn't really wowed me as much as, I expected him to go into New Jersey. I thought that was a really good fit for him. And it just hasn't translated into, the fireworks that I thought we were going to get. So he's somebody too who, I think could provide a lot more offense and give this team, a lot more offense and give them a better chance to fight and claw back into the series.
Yeah. What's your feeling though? You think this is still a Rangers victory in 5 or 6 games?
I think the Rangers still end up taking it. 6 or 7. I think like the score was probably more lopsided than the play. I thought that the first 10 minutes for sure, New York was all over them, and then Jersey kind of, got back into the game. And then it just kind of got away from them there at the end. But I think this one could be still be a pretty close, tight series. Could go 6 or 7 games.
All right. Well, Adam Fox led the way offensively in game 1, 4 assists for the all-star superstar, defenseman. And my breakout player, Keandre Miller, played 21-20 assist in this game, 230 on the PK, 3 hits. So good start for him there as well. Philip Hedel with 2 points up front. Chris Kreider, 2 goals as well. All right, game 2 tonight, 7:30 Eastern as well. For more, tune in to Locked On Rangers and Locked On Devils. Coming up on the other side, let's travel like we're going to see Carolina Islanders do. That series will shift up to Long Island, while Boston and Florida go down to South Beach. All that's coming up next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. You are Locked On NHL. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube, where you can find all 35 Locked On NHL shows. That includes Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Locked On NHL Prospects, and every team is covered here on Locked On NHL. That includes the Locked On Panthers podcast and the Locked On Bruins podcast. This is going to be a bit of a series, man. We've seen some big hits too. Like, the temperature's heating up, and does that favor the Florida Panthers, Mike?
I don't know if you think that favors the Panthers. I don't know, man. The Big Bat Bruins, they got some dudes out there who you might not want to mess around with. Like, Nick Foligno's not a joke. They brought in Tyler Bertuzzi. Like, that guy's, he's a pretty big dude. Like, he likes to mix it up. I mean, they've got some hulking guys on that blue line too that you don't want to mess with. Like, I remember I went to a game, Boston-Toronto, and I saw Derek Forbert live, and I'm like, that guy's a mutant.
Yeah.
An absolute mutant. So that's the thing with the Boston Bruins. They can do everything. They've got the skill to win a game, and they've also got, the size to win that type of game if you want to go there. So that's honestly the problem I think you have. There's no weakness in this team. I will say this though, man, like, the Florida Panthers, to me, have been the better team through 2 games. Now, there's been no Patrice Bergeron, and he's very clearly like one of the best players on that Boston team. But they've outplayed them through 2 games. And last night, they deserved to win that game. And Alex Lyon has come in and, done hamburglar things to get them into the playoffs. But now he's actually winning in playoff games, which is something that the hamburglar did not do, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
so the flame hasn't gone out on the Lion King. So can they pull out an upset? I don't know. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. But to be able to come out of Boston with a split, Florida's got to be ecstatic as they head back down to Sunrise.
As Matthew Tkachuk says, we're going to take the split and run.
Yeah,
as they should, going down to Florida. Man, maybe my breakout star of this entire season is Brandon Montour. Like, this guy is a star.
I was so shocked. I remember they rolled into Toronto, and I was speaking with one of their beat writers, and he was like, Brandon Montour, people haven't realized, but like, that guy's having a phenomenal season. He's got like 63 points. This was earlier in the year, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, Brandon Montour has 63 points, and I went and I looked it up, and I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe it. And then he finished the year with like 73 points. It was insane, the season that guy had this year. And it's funny because we probably talked about it on this show actually when we were doing the season preview. And I know I had the Florida Panthers as like one of my bold predictions missing the playoffs, which they almost did. And a big reason was because I thought their blue line was junk. It was like, after Aaron Ekblad, they got nothing. And then here comes Brandon Montour, 73-point season, helps get the Panthers into the playoffs. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know where this came from, but good for him. Good for that guy.
Yeah, he's come a long way since Anaheim and Buffalo. That's for sure. He's been able to put it all together here, and only getting better here. Age 29, kind of a bit Mackenzie Weegar-esque. Obviously, Weegar never hit those heights offensively, but kind of just coming in and slowly and steady, getting better and better. And now he's a star. He had 2 goals in that 6-1. What was final last night?
6-3. It was like a late goal squeaker that got by Lyon for, all intents and purposes, basically a 6-2 hockey game. But the thing about him is, like, I don't ever remember him being offensive player, Brandon Montour.
No, but he hasn't given up any defense by becoming this offensive talent. He's solid at both ends. And we should note, like, this was a 2-2 game going into the third period as well. It's not like the Lightning going up, what was it, 6-2 after 2 periods. Like, this was a tight game. Bertuzzi tied it on the power play. Both Boston goals were on special teams. Marchand had a shorty in this game, but yeah, just pulled away in a span of the first 7. They scored 22 seconds in. Again, those momentum goals, and then just chipped away throughout the period and were able to get a big win. So credit to the Cats, man. They play hard, and I'm hoping this becomes more of a series, but I still heavily lean towards the Bruins winning this.
You still go with Ullmark for game 3?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I don't even think twice about it.
All right.
I am hearing though that they might not think the same way.
Are you? I haven't heard anything, but you give up a 6 spot. They have been a tandem situation all year, and we did see a questionable goaltending situation in Minnesota. Does Jimmy Montgomery overthink things and flip to his other guy in that tandem? I don't know. We'll see come game 3.
One thing we do know is come game 3, the fireworks will continue. We had a ton of misconducts in this game. Forbort tossed, Bertuzzi tossed, Hathaway tossed, Foligno tossed, Frederick tossed. That's all just on Boston. Gudis got tossed, Lomberg as well on the Cats side.
Dude, they just ran out the clock. There was 3 seconds left, and there was like basically a line brawl, and they just legitimately said, all right, everyone go to your dressing rooms. We're running out the clock. Like, you never see that in hockey. You at least see a puck drop, but they were just like, no, just run the clock. This thing's over. It's getting out of hand. Done.
Enough is enough. And that's probably what the New York Islanders are feeling. Obviously, a controversial call in overtime, or a controversial non-call. And the Hurricanes go down and score. They win 4-3 in overtime. They've got a 2-0 series lead. I think most surprising is 4 past Ilya Sorokin. I know they had 36 shots, but a few of those goals I'm saying, is that the same Sorokin we saw during the regular season? What's your take on this series through 2 games?
Yeah, this was the series that I thought that, and look, they've been, it's been a close series. Don't get me wrong. But this is one where I thought the Islanders actually stood a chance. Like, I thought of all of the underdog teams, the Islanders maybe I looked at as the team that is most likely to upset. No, they're the team that's heading, back home down 0-2. The only team heading back home down 0-2, I might add. We'll see after tonight, obviously. But I to go back to that the controversial call that you're referring to, the non-call rather. Did you see Mike Rupp's tweet last night explaining why he thought that was the right call for them not to call the high stick, because it pretty much was just who was it Mayfield, the defenseman? It was. Mayfield, kind of goes for a stick lift, pops his stick, which is what forced it up to hit him in the face, and felt that was the reason why the referee, who was standing right there, saw the play happen, decided to not call it, because it was basically a self-inflicted situation by the Islanders defenseman.
Yeah, I can see that. I know Mike Johnson disagreed, though. He said you got to always be in control of your stick. So I can see that on both. I had the Islanders in 7, and I am not confident in that at all. But it's not even because Carolina's necessarily played that well.
I mean, and now Teravainen's out, right? Like, they already came into this series without Svechnikov, without who else did they lose? Pacioretty, and now no Teravainen. Like, that team's getting thin up front. There's not a whole lot of other guys that they had to rely on Jesper Fast to win it in overtime for them last night.
Well, yeah, so, Stefan Nason and Paul Stastny are your other goal scorers, right? These aren't your household names that are getting it done here for Carolina.
No, I'll say this. Nason's had a good year. Sneaky good year for Stefan Nason. Former Leaf, former Shark. I think former Devil, too, actually.
Sens draft pick.
There you go. Sens draft pick. What trade did he leave in?
Bobby Ryan.
Part of the Bobby Ryan deal. Look at that.
Yeah, there you go. So you're going way back. And if you want to go even a step further, the pick they got to use him was for a trade for Mike Fisher. So there you go.
Pretty far back.
Stefan Nason figuring it out here First time he's reached 30 points in an NHL season this year, 36 points in 78 games. So, yeah, great to see those success stories here as a 30-year-old now from Texas, a rare Texan in the NHL. I think it's him and Blake Coleman are the only ones. So, good start for the Carolina Hurricanes, but if you heard Rod Brindamore not happy after last night's game, thought that his players were being taken liberties. And you and I have talked, like, Carolina plays hard on the stick all the time. Like, that's like their calling card defensively. So I don't know how much sympathy I have that one little whack got, the wrong spot. And we hope that Teravainen recovers, hell of a player. But to complain about officiating when your team gets 6 power plays and the other team gets 0 is a bit much for my liking in the playoffs.
It's playoff hockey. It's playoff hockey at the end of the day. Like, this is the stuff that you're going to see. Like, guys are going to take a chunk out of you so that you're not 100%.
Yeah.
Like, that's plain and simple the way that it goes when you're in a 7-game series like this.
What's your most intriguing storyline going through the next week? Give me 2, because obviously I'm sure one has to do with the blue and white.
Yeah, I mean, how does Toronto respond tonight in game number 2, right? Like, it's essentially a must-win game for them. They can't go into Tampa down 0-2. It's just not feasible, not feasible whatsoever for this Leafs team. So that's one thing that I'm certainly going to be tracking. I guess the other one is, like, are the Cats for real? Like, through 2 games, they've controlled the games. Like, I'm looking, their expected goals, 58% expected goals this season, are in the series through 2 games at 5-on-5. So they've been the better team through 2 games, which I was not anticipating to see. But with Patrice Bergeron probably coming back, I would assume now, how do they handle his return, right? So to me, it's can the Cats continue to give the Bruins a run for their money? That's the one that I'm curious to see. Is the first 2 games for real, or is it a facade? And once Bergeron gets back, he says, all right, boys, enough screwing and dinking around. Let's put these guys in a hole.
I think that they're going to be motivated. There's no question going down to Florida. But for me, the storyline has to be what happens in game 2 between the Devils and Rangers. Because, I mean, you're looking across the board, and yeah, we've had some road teams win both in the East and West, but I'm curious to see how long, if that trend will continue. And obviously we're riding with the Rangers in this series, and I've got the Rangers winning the cup. So very important start, but I'm curious to see that series. That really has my attention. And obviously I'll be tuned in, locked on to the Toronto Maple Leafs Tampa Bay Lightning series here, watching every shot they put up of the Leaf pile. Maybe my favorite thing on TV, like Move Over, American Idol, any other show there that gets high ratings. Like, I need a fan cam in the corner of Maple Leaf Square at all times.
Yeah. It has become an interesting stat through the first 3 days of the playoffs. The team who scores first, 11-1.
Wow. Really?
Score first is the key tonight, I think, for all 4 of the teams looking to pick up victories tonight. Score first.
Who's the one team that didn't? Edmonton in game 1?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because they got out to a 2-0 lead against LA and then fell 4-3 in OT.
Wow, nice little stat guy Mikey to finish off today's show. A reminder, you can follow Mike on Twitter at Mikey_Canuck and on Twitter, Leafs Locked on Leafs?
Locked on Leafs.
Locked on Leafs. Easy for me to say here. Hopefully not so easy for the Maple Leafs tonight. If you want to hate watch the game, you can do that at Send Central with me. But for today, we say goodbye. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.